I'm not used to getting presents on Boxing Day, but the Premier League wouldn't refuse. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name is Elliot, the Blackman Twitter Yank Gunner. Merry Christmas. Happy Boxing Day to those of you celebrating. For those of you who are not celebrating, happy those are fun results days. I must admit, as we are recording right now, the Liverpool game is going on. I will not say what is presently happening in it. All I will say is that at the moment, I have a tingly feeling all over my body. That may or may not just, be the football, or it may be something else I need to see a doctor about. But we did get a City loss. We did get a Spurs loss. We did get a Chelsea loss. We did get a United loss. It's a fun day. It's a fun day for the football. And I'm just going to go ahead and say that I'm enjoying it. And it is one of those things. I know sometimes people struggle with the Schadenfreude when we're not top of the league and we haven't won a quad, but I can enjoy it just about any time. So I hope you can as well, and I hope you do as well to the extent that you are able. I hope that your holiday has been successful, healthy, happy, joyous. If it isn't, we love you, and I hope that there are better days ahead. I am sure there will be better days ahead, so hang in there. Because it is Boxing Day, we've not asked Clive and Tim to tear themselves away from whatever they're doing, which honestly, let's be honest, was probably just watching the football anyway. But we do have Paul here, and we are going to answer your questions about Boxing Day fixtures, but also a lot about transfers, which is always fun for everybody. Hashtag clicks. All right, so here he is now. Hello, Paul.
Woohoo! And a happy St. Stephen's Day to all our Irish listeners. We do things different where I come from.
I mean, I don't know any of the stuff about any of the things, so I am just happy that people have things to celebrate. We do have lots of stuff that we celebrate. But, Paul, have you opened any of these Premier League gifts that we've been given today?
I sampled. They were canapes, hors d'oeuvres, amuse-bouche, I think some fancy people call them.
Moose-bouche. My bouche is a moose, let me tell you.
So, it's been really good. Man City won, Everton won. What's not to like about that?
Yeah.
Aston Villa getting stuffed. What's not to like about that? Tottenham red card. Bruno Fernandes. What's not to enjoy?
Well, I mean, there's a lot to enjoy. The only thing not to enjoy is Arsenal didn't play, but we do get to play tomorrow. We will have an instant reaction at full time of that. It will be hopefully an ebullient one, but it will be one nonetheless, and we will be here with you for it. We'll have Clive from the ground. We'll have ourselves, I believe, and maybe anyone else who chooses to join. And we're going to do a countdown episode real soon. So if you haven't done one of those, they are lots of fun. 10 quick fire topics for the guest of the moment, usually Clive, and we get to a lot of stuff there. So look forward to that. If you want to be there, remember, you can still use code 10NIL, get the first month half off, which means like $2.50 to just try it. I'm telling, we do probably 4 or 5 patron pieces of content every single week. So if you're someone who's like, I just want something every day to listen to, I think 6 out of 7 days of the week, if not 7 out of 7 days, we have something out for you. Maybe not on the holiday weeks, to be fair, but just about all the other weeks. You can listen in Spotify. You can listen in Apple Podcasts. You can listen in the places you want. You can even subscribe right on Apple Podcasts if you want. If you're like, that's the only thing I know how to do, you can do it. We'd love to have you there. But we are just thrilled to have you anywhere we can get you, which, could be misinterpreted. Could be lawyers.
I am busy interpreting that already. I'm well ahead of you.
Lawyers could be drafting up cease and desist all over the place right now. But okay, let's get into it. We have questions on all the different social media platforms, and I'm going to read a bunch of them. But I like this one before we get to the
Elliot, what have they got out there in terms of social media these days?
Can I level with you? I'm mostly spending my time in our Discord now because it's gotten so difficult for me to keep up with it. And frankly, like, if I'm going to be ridiculed and screamed at and insulted by people, I want it to be people who are committed listeners to the podcast. So,
people who paid for the privilege. Yeah,
exactly. Okay, so Ola Shakira Forever asks, sorry, I've misread that. Apologies to Ola. It says Shakia Forever. So I apologize. Not Shakira Forever. But,
I thought don't lie.
Well, I thought maybe it was a Kai Havertz thing. Okay. In light of recent results around the league, are the results we had during the, quote, slippery period actually okay? And I don't even know if it's a slippery period, but post-interlull, Paul, there's been a lot of gnashing of teeth, but 3-0 over a very good Forest, 2-0 over United, and then we had, the 5-1 in the Champions League over Sporting. We had the 3-0 over Monaco. We had the 5-2 over West Ham. Then there were the slippery ones, the Everton and Fulham draws, where I think we played well enough to win both, but maybe not as well as we'd like. Well, Everton have produced a ton of draws lately against some pretty good teams. Fulham are beating teams that are considered good. They just beat Chelsea away today. And then we went on, to make quick work of who was it that we just beat? I want to say 3-0.
Crystal Palace.
Yeah, sorry, not 3-0. What am I talking about? We slapped them to pieces in 2 consecutive games in the League Cup and in the league. So, I think all in all, it's an interesting one. And I should point out that Palace got a 0-0, but a draw at a very good Bournemouth team today. So in light of these results that you've seen around the league, do we need to maybe reevaluate whether this was even a slippery period at all?
God, you can tease it in so many different ways. Honestly, I think it's about right. Doesn't mean we always got the result in the game that matched the performance, but I think, as always, we got a little luckier in some and a bit unlucky in others.
Yeah.
It really, look, you can just sum up our season so far with when we had the players and they were fit, we were really, really good. And you can boil a lot down to Saka and Odegaard are by far the 2 most important players in. Like, who would you put up on that level that takes us down so much when they're not there? I think outside of those 2, it's probably, I would have said Saliba. Like, those are your 3. If you have those 3 across pretty much every game, we're good. I don't think we draw or lose some of the games we drew or lost. And if you don't, then the possibilities, our control over the outcome is less. It's less inevitable. And I think the results we have reflect and map pretty closely to when we did or didn't have those 2 players available and fully fit and firing. We got Martin Odegaard back, and then he kind of cooled off for a game or 2 where it's almost like he was on fumes at that point. He came back charged up, brilliant, beyond expectations, and then he kind of flatlined just a little bit in terms of his output. It was too much for him, and too magical how he came back, and he just kind of calmed down and got a bit tired, had a baby, and you could almost... what's it all correlate to? It correlates to lots of different things. I think it correlates to when did we have Saka plus Odegaard fit and firing, and we're a great team with them, and we're quite a good team without one of them, and we can get footballed.
Yeah, and we'll get on to Saka stuff. By the way, we obviously have questions about how we handle that, and we'll come to the January business in a minute. But I just want to stay on this for a second and just say, I look at how we've played post-international break with Odegaard back, with most of the key players we need available, and now no longer the case. But I see a team that I think is playing good football, dominant football, winning football. I actually think the Palace game stands out, Paul, as being a little different for us. In this last Palace game, the league game, where we probably conceded more quality chances than we want to. I think some people think that was by design. I tend to disagree. I think Palace played in a way we're not particularly used to being played, and maybe we're a little sloppy and played into it until it got to 3-1 when we rolled them. But I think this has been a very good period of reinforcing that we are a solid team. When you look around the league, especially look at City, and what they look like right now, and Chelsea just lost at home to Fulham, and their defense is a little shaky. Liverpool, as much as we haven't closed the gap, unfortunately, are going through a bit of a shaky period of their own that would feel shakier were we to have taken advantage with wins over Everton and Fulham. I still see us as the team that plays the most dominant football. And 11v11 this season, I think we have the best expected goal difference in the league. The second best expected goals, by the way, but we are the best defensive team in the league, I believe, certainly. So I don't regard this as anything other than a continuation of what I think this team is. It's the first period where we've seen us play with the players we need predominantly and without red cards in any of this run. And I think by and large, we've been the team that we believe we are. Warts and all, by the way, and the warts I would point to are simply that we're a team that probably is short that extra player we need to get the goals in games where the goals are hard to come by.
Yeah, I would say if we had our two talisman fit for basically for the whole season, as Liverpool look like they're going to do,
at least so far. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, then you have two teams who are pretty equally matched, but we win because we have a better defense.
Yeah. I think that's right. And look, I mean, Mohamed Salah has posted his Merry Christmas message on social media, which means he's done for the season. All kidding aside, if you're not familiar with that, there is a sort of meme about his decline. And there is a statistical evidence of him declining post-Christmas. And we need it to happen because he's on pace for one of the great, if not the greatest seasons statistically in Premier League history. So that would certainly be a big change. So we'll just have to see what happens. I mean, I think obviously now we're going to run into the injury issue. And it reminds me a little of when Saliba got injured in the Europa League and Tomiyasu got injured at the same time. Saka gets injured. And the guy we brought in the summer, whether you loved that move or hated that move or you're somewhere in between, he was the body. And we'd just seen him maybe percolate a little bit in the League Cup against Palace, and Sterling has a knee injury now and he's out. And it's these cluster injuries, right, where you don't have Saka and you lose Sterling, where you have to start thinking about solutions that you wouldn't otherwise like to, because it involves moving players out of positions where they're in. And you know, I think we can get into that topic quickly with maybe a funny way of asking it. Spiffle Spaffle asks, how long until people start to suggest that Saka was the problem all along? Winky face. He does the winky face emoji just to show that he's kidding. But Paul, it is an interesting one. We've had a huge dependence on him. If you look at all our goals this season and his involvement, either through the assist, the goal, or a shot creating action leading to the assist and goal, whatever it was, I mean, he's a lot of it. So this isn't just a loss of a talent. This is a loss of the way we try to make an impact in games, especially the first goal, the first impact. And in fact, he was the source of the first goal for against Palace in the league. So what do you think we are losing? How do you think we try to replace it? And is there, you know, just trying to see things as half full, even though I don't believe this, is there a world where it makes us a better team long-term to go through this absence?
No to the last part.
Right. I agree, by the way. I think, let me just say this, not to interrupt you, but I get it, right? You don't want to be fully dependent on a player. The great teams depend on their great players. Is it fair to say Barcelona depended on Messi, or the Invincibles depended on Henry, or that Liverpool are depending on Salah, or that City depended on Haaland for goals? Like, great teams do depend on their great players because it is the great players that make them different from other quality teams. So I agree with you, Paul. Like, there's no good that comes from losing your best player.
Now, well, there is at the kind of the unit level, right? There are players now who can look at this and say, well, I want to go out there with Bukayo on the team and blah, 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 and us play better and like we'd have a better chance. But I now have a chance to play 90 minutes where I was coming off the bench, or, you know, let's look at Martinelli, right? As long as he has some level of decent form, he's going to play on the left wing or the right wing going forward. And he can settle into that and think, right, here we go. I've got a period now which is important, which is critical, and I'm going to play significant roles in each and every game as long as I got my level where it needs to be. Trossard, you know, we've seen an element of moodiness from him earlier in the season when maybe he didn't feel quite as automatic on the sheet as he would like to be, given what he'd done for us in 2024. And look at Gabriel Jesus, right? This is it. This is his time. He's desperate to be important. He's desperate to be a starter. He's desperate to get the chance to score goals. He's desperate to get back in the thinking of the Brazil team. There it is. It's all there for you. So at that level, and then that does filter back into, does it make us a better team? It makes us a better team because the thing Mikel has talked about players feeling important and part of it, no matter where they are in kind of our first 18 or so. Ethan Nwaneri's got to look at this and say, okay, I'm going to get chances here. I might get, he might get 30 minutes against Ipswich. I'm sure we'll end up talking about this, or certainly this is a topic, but obviously he's a candidate for that right wing too. or for anything else that could happen in the game, right? He's just, if he performs, he could come on as left 8 alongside Odegaard with 30 minutes to go. He could come on as a right winger. He could in a few games start in one of those positions if the performances are good enough. It's actually really exciting for the units of the team who would normally be a bit frustrated in the first half of the season. You always see it in the second half of the season. You look at the team sheets and you say, wow, I didn't see that in preseason. I didn't see that happening in the first half of the season. Chances will be there. Players will or won't step up, and they will completely rewrite their narrative, right? And so from a team standpoint, you always want to take what you got and go on, because like even with Odegaard and Saka, this team is not where it needs to be. We want to be the best team in the world. We want to go into a season thinking we're the best candidate to win the Champions League and the Premier League. We're not there yet. I don't look at this team and say, oh yeah, we're the best team in the Champions League. Now, part of that is experience, and you got to put in the work and the yards, but I don't think that's how I see this squad and team quite yet. So we've got levels to go up. So you want to build on what you have and push beyond it. Yeah, there'll be a benefit from this, but I'd much prefer to build on it from Saka and Odegaard. I do think the big thing about Saka, right, is you think to the individual performance or his combinations, his goals, assists, his combinations, his contributions, but it's how we play, the way we control the game, the way we get into the attacking third and stay there and don't spill the ball, and we come back at them repeatedly from that side. We move away from it and back to it. And it's a way of playing that we can't replicate with anybody else. And so you lose kind of first, second, third order effects with Bukayo Saka. We can't play the same way. We can't dominate in the attacking third in dangerous ways from the right-hand side. So it's a very interesting challenge. I have a couple of thoughts on it. But Mikel has to come up with not just try and replace Saka, but come up with other ways of staying in the attacking third, getting a headlock on them, keeping technical surety. Otherwise, you get into a ding-dong battle in which you're just hoping to be better than the other team, a bit Crystal Palace-y, which was a fun game, and we were the better team. But you could also see how that game could have gone differently, had a couple of things kind of spill the other way. But like the Chelsea game, right? Chelsea today looked like a team who should have beaten Fulham, but they didn't control that game in any aspect, and so you get footballed in the holiday season. So,
if you had to rate your guess on who gets the crack at the Saka position the most versus the options, kind of rate, because I think Martinelli's an option, moving Jesus over there is an option. He mentioned Kai. I don't believe that for a second. Ethan Nwaneri is obviously an option. Sterling would have been, but let's rule him out for now for the knee injury because we don't know the status here. Can you just kind of rank order of who you think will get the most to the least minutes in that position?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Martinelli is the clear winner for me. Because
you'd have him number one, and I guess that means Leo over on the left with Jesus through the middle and Kai at 8.
Yeah, exactly. Which is, remember the Leverkusen game I was talking about, especially after the Crystal Palace setup once Saka went off. We saw something on the left-hand side which kind of replicated what we always do with Saka and Odegaard. Different players, slightly different dynamic, but we just worked them, twisted them, turned them, controlled it with Trossard left, Kai as the 10, Jesus, who tends to lean over or play over to that side, and they just found each other. We had Zinchenko as the left full back. We had Jorginho started the game, but they weren't the dynamic. It was the three or four mentioned players, just combinations and clever play, and Saka wasn't playing that game, and I'm like, oh, look, there's a way of playing without Saka where we can dominate in the attacking third and give an opponent all sorts of problems. And you stick Martinelli over on the right-hand side, and he gets to attack in space. So I would like to see that tried, please.
So,
and number two would be, number two, I mean, I don't think there is a good number 2 apart from Nwaneri starting as a sub and then progressing and then,
I actually
maybe
think
getting some starts.
Nwaneri playing the Saka role is better for him than where he's been playing. I think midfield is a harder place to learn the game, and he's still been thriving there. But you just the way you have to release the ball at exactly the right time. He likes to dribble. He likes to beat a man. He's got a great curler off the left foot. He has the most Saka analog to him. But here's what I would say. I'm going to slightly disagree with you, Paul. I think the number one option here is Jesus. And the reason is I didn't think Kai looked great at left 8 against Palace, even though he scored. I thought when Rice came on, we were much, much better. And I still believe Kai at center forward is the best place for him to play. Jesus, in his current form, I think can be just as effective off the right, and sometimes I think looks more effective off the right. I'd probably stick with Jesus there. Kai center forward, Leo or Martinelli off the left, and then use Rice, Odegaard, and Partey, or Marino, Odegaard, and Rice, whatever the midfield 3 is. I think it's the least amount of change from the things that tend to work for us versus moving Martinelli right, which I liked him there, but it's a lot of change for a lot of reasons. First of all, it means Kai stays in midfield. It means Jesus stays at center forward, at least for the time being. It's a right footer off the right instead of a left footer off the right, which even though I think it works for Martinelli, is not the default plan for the manager. So I think it is the most disruptive, whereas Jesus off the right, in current form, Kai center forward, Martinelli or Trossard left, and the midfield of your choice. That feels the most like keeping our game model and our style and our approach and our players in their comfortable place of all of the options that are readily available to us, if that makes sense.
It does, and it's very logical. But the reason I kind of thought about Jesus from the right for the reasons you talk about. But Arteta has not seemed... When Jesus first came to the club, I'm like, well, he'll play from all sides. He can play all over the place. He can play through the middle mostly. But Arteta has not seemed to want to play him off the wing. So there's kind of a few
point about that, though, just real quick. Like,
he hasn't had the reason before.
Well, Saka's played so much and been available so often, and Jesus was actually injured, unfortunately, so often that we just don't have a really good feel for whether he didn't want to or there was just never an opportunity.
Sure. I'm going to use a little bit of gut feel on that one because I can't prove it. I think the other logical piece is finally he has a Jesus who's fit firing and up for it. He's going to be really slow, potentially, to move him from the center forward spot right this moment, in case, he seems like a boy who can have his nose out of joint super quick. Now, it doesn't mean you wouldn't move him there, and doesn't mean he wouldn't see the reason why, but he has one bad game, and like the shoulders will go down, the head will drop. I could see him starting with because we just seen it with Martin. We've basically seen that set up in the last game. So that's why I think this will be the pattern that starts. If it doesn't work, he'll start to look at other things. And I think the most progressive positive pattern is that it works. It works pretty well. I see my Leverkusen thing happening on the other side. He keeps Jesus in a spot that's going okay. He does have the challenge that Havertz can be very effective in that area in some games, in other games not so effective because he's basically a second striker rather than a left 8. So it depends on how much we can dominate that game. It probably depends a lot on who the left 8 is. If the left 8 can control the midfield from there, if you've got Calafiori or Timber coming from left 8, then you have that support for Havertz behind him. And if Miles Lewis-Skelly can step up, if Zinchenko could stay fit, but you're not going to use him for 90 minutes. So I think it's a little bit dependent on how fit and firing the left back is, whether you can have Havertz on the left side if he's not quite as technically secure to keep things ticking along there and to provide the cover. I think it'll start like that, and I just don't think Mikel's going to lean into Jesus at right wing, though I see why. And I see the chances for Nwaneri to step up and start to become a little bit of a star. I agree with you. He's got so much of the Saka game in many parts. in his ability to take a ball and make a fool of a player 1v1, the quick, clever little passes and combinations. I really think he could do a bang-up job replicating Saka, and so that's my guess. But I think your idea with Jesus is extremely logical.
I should mention, by the way, that like he is also a right footer, right? Obvious. So to my point about Martinelli, but there's just something about Jesus being a little more wiggly, in the channels and things, where I think of Martinelli really wanting to stay on his strong foot, and when he gets to the byline, he can be very effective. We'll see. I
mean, imagine as a left back, you face 60 minutes of Martinelli, who then comes off or gets switched to the other side, and then 30 minutes of Nwaneri, totally different footed.
Yeah,
it's like as long as those guys are on form. You don't want to be that left back.
Hate to be the bearer of bad news, and as you're listening to this, you probably would know it. But I mean, Liverpool equalized on the stroke of halftime with an outside the box goal from Cody Gakpo.
I'll take a draw, Elliot. I will take a draw.
Not me. We need two Patson Daka, it says here, goals in the second half for a 3-1 Liverpool win. I'll hang my hat on that one. Okay, well, just to wrap up this point, because we did get another question about this. Matt Browner Hamlin asked, should Arteta consider changing shape, e.g. to 3 at the back, to handle injuries and volume of games? We covered players that could play for Saka. Should he go to 3 at the back? And I'll answer this emphatically myself. No, we have the best game model in England, in my mind. We dominate teams better than anybody else, with or without Saka. I still think the goal when you lose a key player is less change, not more. I mean, look, if you're down to a situation kind of like Spurs were the other day against Liverpool, where you're playing kids and midfielders at center back, sometimes you have to make changes that you're just pushed into because you have nothing left. But I wouldn't change shape and system, because I still think our shape and system are as good or better than anyone's. But do you feel differently? Is it worth experimenting with something a little different?
No, I'm with you on that. Plus, I mean, we all know that 4 can be a 3 in the blink of an eye, right? You end up in what do you play? You play a 3-2 either way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is. So I guess what you could do, Paul, is you could do something along the lines of Saliba, Gabriel, and Timber, and you could play wing backs, right? So like you could have Martinelli on the left and Nwaneri on the right playing wing back more, right? And then you can kind of pick the rest from there, right? That'd be your 5. And then your other 5 are, let's say, Partey and Rice and Odegaard, Kai and Leo, or whatever you want it to be.
I guess the question is, what problem would we be trying to solve?
I mean, you get an extra attacker on, ironic. Like, you actually have one less defender then. So you're replacing Saka with volume, because what you can really attack with is Martinelli and Nwaneri on the edges. You have Leo, Kai, and let's say Jesus, Odegaard is in there as well. I mean, that's too many players, isn't it? It's 12 players. No, I mean, but you do get one more attacker, right? Because instead of it being Martinelli, Jesus, let's say Martinelli, Kai, and Jesus, you have Martinelli, Kai, Leo, and Nwaneri, right? You have the one more attacker if you're playing with wing backs, although they, it just, I don't know. I don't love it. As you can tell, my mind isn't wrapped around it yet. I haven't had time to think it through. But it is, I mean, Clive always says it, right? When you play a 3 at the back, you're actually playing with one less defender, unless you're really sitting with a block of 5 at the back. But so it is fewer defenders. It is an extra attacker.
Yeah, I just think once you have your fullback step into midfield, you now have 5 players in the attacking end, and you have 2 guys in midfield, and you've 3 at the back, and you're not going to play with 6 in the attacking end.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's spaces and coverage and how you get to those spots. It's a little different. It's quite a different way of playing, but I think you can basically keep our game model, our way of playing, and pretty much get the advantages of the 3 at the back system from an attacking standpoint. You don't have the same width. Your angles are a little different on how, your pressing angles when you play 3 at the back, and you have that 5 and you're pushing up, and you like all of the pressing angles are different when you're pressing midfield and attack. And so you're changing quite a lot, I think, not just, how many players or how wide. The angles for everybody are a bit different on the attack and on the counter. I wouldn't do it in a rush, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't either. So I think we can move on. Look, we'll quickly touch on this because it's Boxing Day and it's been a fun one. Very quick question from Mark B. Who gets the sack first, Amorim or Ange? Bonus points for guessing the month it happens. I would throw in there Pep Guardiola as an option. I mean, this was as fun a day of results as possible, although currently we've got one left for it to be the perfect day. United lost 2-0 to Wolves, down to 10 men. Tottenham lost at Forest, 1-0, down to 10 men. Villa got smoked, by the way, 3-0, down to 10 men. Fulham beat Chelsea away in a game where they got the goal in the 90th +5 to win it. And it was just a classic smash and grab at the end there. In fact, Palmer scored early and 2 late goals from Fulham make it a fun day for them. City got held by Everton, which is pretty damn funny, in a game that included a Haaland missed penalty. And if you didn't see it, it was the penalty of a man who is staying so humble. I would say it's possible to stay too humble, but I'm enjoying it. So
did he do that meditation lotus position afterwards? Because really it's just as valid in those circumstances.
He might need the meditation more now, to be fair. Yeah. That robot is broken. His firmware has crashed, and I love it. So what do you think of the day? And yeah, is it Amorim out first or is it Ange out first? I am actually a little nervous, candidly, that we lose Ange before Tottenham make the trip to the Emirates.
Yeah, you see, because I think the questions are wrong. I think the guy is looking at it wrong. It's not who goes first. It's who lasts the longest. Because what's the rush here, guys? We want the slow... Erik ten Hag was great over several seasons. I mean, terrible. But great. And Amorim ain't going anywhere quickly. And Daniel Levy does not want to sack Ange before the end of the season. So I think we've got a good... Neither of those are leaving this season, I don't think. That would be... I just don't think that's feasible on the cards or whatever. I mean, they might leave with a couple of games to go or something like that. But I think we're going to enjoy them for the full season. They get to next summer. And, at that point, if I really had to pick, obviously, it's going to be Ange because they get to the summer and they got to make some decisions what players they buy, whereas Amorim hasn't even had that yet. They've picked him. He's their first pick, the new setup. So they're going to give him a summer for sure and a bunch of players and see him do his thing. Ange, on the other hand, Levy has to decide if he wants to splunk 150 million in the summer on players that Ange wants, and he's got to decide, is that a sustainable thing going forward? And I think by the summer he'll have decided it's not sustainable. Yeah.
So first things first, this about me, Paul. I think Ange is a terrible manager. I don't think he's a professional manager. I think he is someone who thinks the club is there to serve his ideology, his philosophy about football, when he is there to deliver wins. You could say we had an idealist in Arsene Wenger about the way to play football, but Arsene Wenger wanted to win more than he wanted to do anything. Now, he wanted to win in a certain way, and he built his teams that way. But those teams could play in other ways. And yeah, we paid the price for it at times. I mean, we were short at the back, and we saw those games like the 6-0 to Chelsea on his 1000th game, the 8-2 when we did the trolley dash season when there wasn't enough talent. But we also saw us go to places like, the Camp Nou and try to hold on and defend. And the team could do it. It wasn't as good as this team at doing it. But I want to love the football I watch, okay? I want a team that attacks and plays front-footed football. But part of the reason I want that is I think you must do that to win. I don't think you can be a winning team playing defense-first football at the level we want to be a winning team. But I do enjoy a team that can be pragmatic, and I do enjoy a team that has the set pieces figured out and the defending figured out and the rest defense figured out. The thing that stunned me about Spurs against Liverpool is just every turnover is a counterattack. Every long ball is a counterattack because they're so out of shape. So I think he's terrible. I'm also not convinced Amorim will still be there long term. I think he seems like a big personality. And look, everybody loves getting a lot of money to do a job that has no expectations anymore, it seems. But like, I think they're a million miles away talent-wise. Players they had big hope for, like Garnacho and Mainu, are coming under the microscope in a big way now for criticism. Mainu got the proverbial stinker and hooked again today. He was taken off. Ugarte can't pass. Xerxes and Hoyland are short of the level they need to be a top Premier League team. Lenny Yoro,
Lisandro Martinez,
little and large, right? They got Lenny Yoro, who I think has talent, but is way too young to know, and Lisandro, who I'm not sure has talent and is way too small to play center back. They just built the team in a very peculiar way. Rashford seems to be on the way out.
The one player they can really rely on is Maguire.
Yeah, I mean, the irony is Maguire might be their best defender at the moment. You know, and it is a train wreck. Casemiro still has to play a bit, but he can't do much. They have Antony somehow still there, which is hilarious. Bruno Fernandes got himself sent off today with just a dumb challenge. I don't know. I don't know that there's turning that around. They are currently, I want to say 14th on a -3 goal difference. Like, they might not get to 40 points this season. Now, look, they're going to stay up because the bottom 3 teams are terrible, but it's a mess. Chelsea losing, just quickly on this, Paul, like I think Chelsea, if you really dig into the numbers, Chelsea have been the inverse Arsenal over the last couple of weeks because they've been getting the variance. They've been getting the luck. Their XG numbers are bad. They haven't created a ton. They've given some stuff up, but they've managed to get wins out of it. Today it turns around. I just think that's a team that is going to be comfortably in the top 4, but defensively isn't strong enough yet. So I think they got a way to go. What about you?
Yeah, they're regularly going to get footballed, variance. It's just too open. I mean, it's fine for them given where they've been and where they're going. Like, they can build on this season. They'll probably be pretty happy with an exciting third in a top 4. It's a young team. They can build on it, kind of thing. But I expect in the second half of the season they're going to start spilling more points than maybe it felt like they were going to do a week or two ago. There's all those gaps and holes are still there when it's not going their way, and they'll get footballed on a regular occurrence.
What's funny is they actually create less than you'd think. They're seen somehow as the free scoring team, but if you look at their attacking metrics, like, they don't create as much as you might think if you don't watch them closely. One last thing on the results around the league, like, it's more drop points for City. I mentioned earlier this season that it's like the horror movie for me when, all the characters in the horror movie are celebrating because they think the bad guy's dead, and he's clearly just laying there waiting to kill them all, and like, he's definitely not dead, and they're like standing there with shotguns and knives in their hands being like, yay, he's dead. And I'm like, maybe put another one in him, maybe just another couple, make sure he's dead. And sure enough, he gets up and he slaughters everybody. Like, I keep waiting for this bad guy to get up off the ground, the horror movie villain to get up off the ground, the Terminator to get back up. But it doesn't feel like that's happening. And I'm starting to think the players that really carried them, the Rodris, the De Bruynes of the world, you look at Gundogan now, these are players that are past their best or missing. And the other players maybe were drafting off of their quality more than we appreciated. And maybe the Pep message is just starting to fall on deaf ears. I said this, and I got some weird stares, and I understand why. It sounds really stupid. But when he re-signed his contract, or signed his new contract, I said, you know what? Pep has never stayed somewhere this long and tried to rebuild a thing this many times. And like, everybody's message goes stale eventually, especially a perfectionist like him. I wonder if there is a little bit of that too, of the players being like, we thought we were going to get a fresh start under someone. We're ready for this maniac, this crazy guy to go. Do you think there is a bit of that? Just the whole message going stale, and maybe the cycle is ending finally?
Yeah, I think, look, he's a very intense guy. He's got that kind of intensity and perfectionism that works when you're close to perfect and you're winning almost all the time. This is new ground for him and for them. They got a potential. Suddenly, their players go from having 2, 3, 4 worldies and a bunch of top level players to actually we're missing a couple of worldies, and we just have very good players. That whole level seems to have dropped, and they're all looking at each other and they're all wondering how this gets solved. And it could quite easily, I think, come apart. And like a rebuild from here, those are not easy. Like, presumably they get Rodri back in the summer. and that kind of resets them, and they add a couple of players and they go again. But Pep may just decide, maybe it was one of those where you sign the contract because you don't know what else to do. And he may look at it and say, you know what, I'm just not feeling it. You know, Freddie doesn't want to get up from behind the sofa and whack one more person with an axe. At one stage, you've done it all. How many different ways can you hit somebody with an axe? And I think there's a substantially non-zero chance that Pep says, I'm not really the man for this at this time. I need to go off and rethink what I want to do. But they'll get a lot better when they get Rodri back and they do a couple of things in the summer and they'll be good again. But kind of, Pep may look at that and say, so what, right? He doesn't want to try and get back to most of what they were before. He'd have to think this is something that takes him up and beyond what he's done in the past, and they're fucking miles away from that. So, you know, he may just say, wasn't such a great idea. I'm not the man for the moment right now.
It'll be fascinating, Paul, to see if the club really go big in January to see if they can salvage this season, or if they're just prepared to take their lumps. And I think if they're prepared to take their lumps, it might indicate that they think there's a penalty coming for them, because why would you spend big in January if you're just going to get knocked down to the championship in June or whatever? So I will be very curious to see what happens there. We'll carry on, though. We're going to start to pivot now to transfers, but Grant Copeland has a very important question that applies to me, and I'm sure to many people listening. I have legitimately gained 7 pounds in December, he says. I am beginning to resemble a waterlogged corpse. Do I continue the binge till January? And here I must quote the late, great John Belushi as John Blutarski in Animal House. And I will say to you, Grant, was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? No, it's not over. It's never over. You go and you go again and you go again until that waterlogged corpse floats ashore. So I say carry on, and I will do the same. Paul, are you prepared to answer some questions about transfers?
Yeah. Well, I'll answer that last one. Here's my advice. Don't be such a little porky little pig.
Mm-hmm. Why? I'd say be the biggest.
Just control
possible.
yourself.
No.
Have an elegant sufficiency, an ample amount.
See, this is what a tall, thin guy says. Great, you can't trust You can't trust thin.
This is why I'm tall and thin. Self-control, a little moderation.
Self-control has nothing to do with you being tall. Let me just be the first to point that out.
I didn't get this tall by not being self-controlled, Elliot. Had you been more self-controlled, Elliot, you'd be a lot taller.
I didn't get this short with self-control, I can tell you that much. And I don't plan to start now. I didn't get 2 daughters with self-control either. So there's a positive side to this. Okay, here we go. 1.76 acres will kick this one off. And a very happy holiday to him and his family. One or the other, which do you choose, Paul? Number 1, spend big at forward on a non-first choice target this January. Meaning no big summer splash. That's our summer splash pulled forward. It's not our first choice, but we're spending big at forward to get it done. Or no incoming signings of any type in January. Keep summer open for the move we really want. Roll the dice with Winery and whoever else we have at the wing, along with current talent on the roster. So do you stick with the squad we have in the absence of our first choice signing? Or do you take a non-first choice signing in January and say, we can't sacrifice the season, this is what it takes?
I don't see how you can spend a lot of money on a non-first choice signing. I just don't think you can do that. Let me ask
you this. What if it's not a lot of money? What if it's like, everything's a lot of money. I was about to say, what if it's something like 50 million? I would gladly take 50 million if you want to call it not a lot of money. But what if it is a 45 or 50 million, a Leo type signing, but because it's someone in a position of need, we don't go in the summer because we feel that we've now got the numbers. You know what I mean? So forget the dollar value or the pound value of the signing, but would you take someone who isn't a first choice if we rate them, but they're not a first choice, but it means you're not going to go get like an Isaac or something in the summer?
I still think the answer is no. I'm going to work on the principle that if you spend the money, that's impactful of the moves you can make in the future. It's felt for a few years the Cronkies were backing spending money And now it feels like we've got to a point where financials are a consideration, and the move you make now subtracts from the move you can make in the future. I think we're a bit marginal on what Martinelli will be for us next season. Would he be a starter? Would he be just competing with whoever the new guy we bring in is? We got Trossard, we've got Havertz and Jesus, where depending on how you're feeling and how we're set up, neither of them is automatically a starter going forward. Obviously, there's a scenario, there's a way of playing in which Havertz is very much a starter for most people. But as the team dynamics change, you could see a situation where every second game he's a starter and every second game he's a sub, depending on how we set up. So my concern would be we end up with too many players in the attacking area of the pitch that are good, not great. Your Trossards. If we didn't have a Trossard, sure, but we have a Trossard, and I think you could have a Trossard, Martinelli, a new guy we add, a Jesus, a Havertz. That's a lot of players where there's only one who's a nailed-on top-level starter, which is Saka, and maybe Havertz, depending on how we continue to play going forward. It will be a lot of money taking away a future move on a player who's support, who's backup, and we need a killer in the summer, either centrally or off the wing. So, there's probably a kind of player who can do a number of things, and yes, I'd take him. It obviously depends a bit on the profile of the player and what he could do, but my tendency is going to lean to keep your powder dry, our favorite phrase, which doesn't bring us all joyful memories of using, but make the moves you want to make. I guess the other side of it is, how good a chance do you think we have to win the Champions League or the Premier League this year? And that's a little bit of a consideration. I'd lean towards making the right move in the summer. That's me. I think we have enough. We got maybe 2 months to hang in there till Saka is back, and we have enough good players if they hit form and Mikel finds a way of playing that gives us different ways of attacking, the kind of the Leverkusen dynamic or something else he comes up with. I think that's how you got to do it, and from here on in, we got to make great moves.
I'm going to say something a little bit controversial, maybe just because I'm thinking through it, and sometimes I like to provoke thought and don't actually believe things I say. I might go for the second choice signing in January move. I don't think you throw seasons away. I think the way it is lining up right now, first of all, we are still in the league, and I think we are still in with a shout of the Champions League.
I agree.
If Saka's, well, hear me out. If Saka's back, let's say end of February, and we add to that a player that maybe isn't our first choice, but let's say you can get Acuna. Now, Acuna, maybe you're saying, well, if I can get him, I would have considered him like a first choice type player. All right, then fair enough. But maybe you can get an Mbeumo or Acuna or a Matoma, someone good, a Leo level signing. Someone who can be an improvement.
I'd take all of those. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And but again, they're not Isaac, right? They're not that. They're not the 120 million quote unquote sure thing. What I would say is a few things. First of all, I don't think the forward of the striker market is so good right now that you could name a player for me, maybe Isaac aside, and say, I am certain this is the guy. And because of that, I think you can maybe go down in price and go to a player who is good and helps you and potentially be better off than going up in price for like a Gyökeres for 100 million and not even being sure he's it. So, because you know what happens? It strengthens you when Saka's out, but boy, does it strengthen you when Saka's back. And I just think if we could find a 27, 26, 25-year-old Leo-esque signing now, the Champions League is there for us. Maybe, just maybe, Salah drops his level slightly and the league is there for you. I think you have to try to go for it this season because you simply don't know what else is out there for you. And seasons are weird. I mean, we've had a rough season this season with injuries and red cards and the margins. You just never know. I mean, we've seen whole projects, Paul, wrecked by a Santi Cazorla who just got injured and never came back, right? Or players leaving unexpectedly. I would probably do a second choice type signing in January as long as I thought he was good,
Yeah, look, there are levels here, right? I don't mean to talk down our players, but there's a Trossard level. He lacks a certain amount of athleticism. And when it's clicking, great. And he's over-contributed in many ways. But there's a Trossard level, there's a Mitoma level, I think. And then there's the kind of trying to get an Isak level. And I think that middle level, if that's what we're talking about, a guy who you're flirting with, is he a starter or isn't he? Because he's good enough. Then yeah, I think you're always going to want that level of guy, and we can step up on Trossard in terms of the levels we have. So it comes down to the player, right? As soon as you say Mitoma, I'm like, yeah, take him, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know if he's a starter next year, but he's going to do you all sorts of good in many games, starter or off the bench. So it's really each year our levels come up. Each half a season our levels come up. I'd want to go better, more dangerous, more athletic in my Trossard signing next time around. So I'd absolutely take a Mitoma.
Yeah, and look, I'm not good at naming the names. Like, if once we've done the scouting videos and I've looked at the data and stuff, I feel a lot more comfortable having those names at mind. But I think there are players in the Premier League that help us and make us better who maybe aren't Isak and maybe aren't Gyökeres, although I don't know him. Maybe aren't Sesko. But what's funny? You look at the season Sesko's having. You look at the season Nico Williams is having. Are you sure these are the guys? No one's sure. You're guessing, and so. Yeah. I think you can be creative and look at some of these teams in the Premier League that have players that might be useful to you. There are players people are talking about like Marmoush. I don't know him that well. I think that's his name, but I just think that there are ways you can do this where you're not sacrificing a season. We'll move on. Get through a couple quick ones here. We got more transfer stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'd quickly say I'd take a Mitoma and a Mbeumo. At that level, I think they're really impactful. Mbeumo is particularly flexible. But the other thing they have is they're Premier League players, which would be great. The other side of it is their clubs won't sell them even if they're not going to make top four and even if they're not going to get demoted because they have lots of money. And unless the guy's coming to the end of his contract this year, I just don't think they do that. Clubs with any kind of ambition in front of their fans can't do it. And so you're talking about a kind of a continental version of the same players and the transition mid-season. It's very, very, very tough to find the player that makes sense for the move. But if you're telling me those two guys are available, I'd take either one of them.
It's funny because Elias asked January transfer, pick one gettable and one aspirational, both for 9 and right wing, for center forward and right wing. In other words, pick a gettable transfer and an aspirational transfer. And for gettable, not forgettable, but for a gettable one, I can pick probably 7 or 8 or 9 different guys. And, again, I don't know what gettable is. I don't know if Lookman is gettable. I don't know if Cunha is gettable. I don't know if, Mbeumo or Mitoma or whoever you want to put in the list. I don't know if you consider them
killed
gettable.
By the clubs that get slaughtered by their fans, wouldn't they?
Well, and that's the thing in the Premier League. There's so much money now. These clubs aren't in the position like they used to be where they have to sell. But as we saw with Trossard, a player can make it hard on the club, right? And some clubs will be willing to cash in depending on where they are in the table and what they think they can do with that money. But my point was more this. Once it came time to name aspirational, I mean, who are the guys you're sure, other than Isak, I think it is a really weird market right now where I don't think there's tons and tons of clearly aspirational signings. But let's move on a little bit. Got a couple more sort of quick fire ones. Kevin Essington asks, what would your Arsenal gift for this season be? It can't be unrealistic. Mine is really easy, Paul. My Arsenal gift that I would ask for is just for Saka's injury to be on the lowest side of the projected absence, right? So we're hearing 8 weeks, we're hearing 10 weeks. Sam Mockbell wrote a piece talking about the club had feared he had torn it off the bone, an avulsion. I don't think that's what they now think, although I got fooled by the past tense when I read that the first time and had a heart attack and wrote some things I regret in the Discord. But setting that aside, like my wish for the holiday season would just be Bukayo Saka's return is less time than I expected. What about you?
Yeah, that would seem to be the obvious pick. You want health and wellness. After that, we can take care of it ourselves. I trust the manager. I trust the team. All we've ever wanted was for this team to stay fit and healthy as it matures and get better each season. I mean, don't know.
Yeah,
don't know. I think I'm a simple man. It's not the big gifts. It's not splashing the cash. It's the experience, being with the ones you love. I want this team to stay fit and healthy and on the pitch. And as a gift, I'd like Nwaneri to kick in the second half of the season and become the player a season or two earlier than he would have otherwise, and I'll take that. My gift is Ethan Nwaneri settling into a level of confidence well beyond his years and even our current expectations, and just kicking on and doing something special.
Yeah, that is also a good one. How about this? Rob Hakimian asked, what's your favorite Arsenal goal of 2024?
I'm thinking the one we didn't score, played out from the back.
I have a one that I think is mine, but it's not a great goal, but I think it's my favorite goal for, implication reasons. You want me to go, or you got one?
Yeah, go for it.
I'll say Trossard's goal against Porto. I think everything I believe about this Arsenal and where we are right now, and as disappointing as it was not to win the title last season, I can intellectually write off not getting past a very good Bayern team that was unlucky not to get past Madrid. They had no league to focus on. They had a ton of talent. We got unlucky not getting the penalty in the first leg. All right, we were a little blunt in Germany, but I think we were a little unfortunate in England, in London. But we fell just short of where I think we really wanted to go in the Champions League, obviously, and just short in the league, but we set our wins record and we had our second most ever points. A lot of ways I can tell myself we were excellent last season. I think crashing out to Porto would have probably put a seed of doubt in my mind. And I realize the margins are so small in knockout football, but I felt we had to get through that tie, and that goal did it for us. And it was closer than it needed to be. And I didn't love how we got through it, but we got through it on penalties. And without that goal, we don't get there. And without getting through that, ironically, maybe we wind up winning the league, right? Because maybe we have the energy against Villa that we wind up not having because it's between two legs against Bayern. So the world is weird sometimes. You get knocked out by Porto, maybe you go on to win the league. But I think we had to get past Porto for this story we're telling about our team to be more credible. And so that was a really important one to me, What about you?
Like the one that sticks out for me is I'm just going back to it to make sure I remembered it right. The Trossard goal against West Ham, the one where Odegaard clips it over the top to Saka, who's made that lovely little run in behind. So it's kind of almost like a Jorginho-esque clip over the top, but it's Odegaard to Saka, who flips it across to Trossard on the left post and kind of has a tap in. But it's a beautiful moment of clever, intricate football of us playing at our highest levels. The other way I would have gone was any Gabriel goal off a corner kick. There's just something resoundingly pleasurable about the kind of the built-up tension and the inevitability and the kind of the narrative F you to all of those who think we're all about corner kicks and the like, because sometimes we are. But I think the goal that sticks out for me in terms of quality of play was the clever goal against West Ham.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think we should start to turn the corner here, but this is an interesting one because I think it just shows you how you have to be so careful about not thinking you know everything in football. We got a question, and I was just on it, and now I'm struggling to find it again, so I may not be able to name check the person, even though I know. Here we go. Yeah, Jay Rogerson asks, with the Saka news, has Gabby Jesus gone from potentially out in January to now being the most pivotal player for the rest of our season? I think that there's probably two hyperboles there. I don't know that he was out in January. I don't know who would have bought on the way his form had been, and I don't think most pivotal for the rest of the season is true. But in terms of the stocks rising, like we sometimes do on the instant reaction, has anyone moved in value to a squad more in recent memory than Jesus has in the last fortnight?
Yeah, probably not. I mean, if we have a great season, it's probably dependent on him stepping up for this couple of months here. If he doesn't, it's just too much to ask of the rest of the players. So that's why, earlier we were talking, like, the individual players within this team have got to look at this and say, well, I'm going to play. If I'm good, if I'm in form, I'm going to play. I'm going to play as much as I can handle. We're going to be in multiple competitions, right? The FA Cup is going to start kicking off. We got the Carabao Cup. We got Champions League. We got Premier League. Jesus being great for this next couple of months will change everything for us. And his head dropping, his shoulders going down because he has a tough game or two or has to play in a different way than he really wants to, and he feels it's beginning to slip away, could crater it. So in that sense, I think the man has a point here, right? He's a bellwether of what's going to happen with our season. Jesus can save us. This might have been his moment, right?
Yeah, I mean, it will be an interesting one to see how long we can ride his form, because if he stays in the form he showed against Palace, Saka, who? I'm kidding, but I'm sort of not, right? I mean, like, that's the kind of form that you can ride out an injury for a while. I do think, Paul, it's not really a question that we were given, but I'll just say to you, do you think we as fans are not understanding enough of the damage that major injuries do to seasons? That, like, if someone had told you ahead of the season Odegaard would miss 2+ months and Saka would miss potentially 2 or 3 in separate injury spells, you would adjust down your expectations for the season. People sort of demand that you just go win, and they don't want to hear excuses. But we also fully acknowledge that talent is the decider of whether you win or not, which is evidenced by the fact that people are obsessed with transfers. Why are they obsessed with transfers? It's new, better talent to bring in. Yet when the talent you have, like, let's put it this way. If I offered you a signing in January or no Saka injury, you're damn well right you'd pick the no Saka injury, because we're not going to sign anyone as good as Saka. We're probably not going to sign anyone half as good as Saka. So are we just not understanding enough of the way injuries wreck seasons? And are we maybe, unfortunately, as a result of that, not bearish enough on the impact of this injury? I hate to say it.
Yeah, in this era in particular, right? Because it's either Man City charging ahead in a season, and if all scenarios are like, how do we attain near perfection last season? Winning 16 of 18 games, drawing 1. And you come into this season, say, how do we become a little bit better and a little bit more perfect? And you're like, Jesus Christ. That's the Man City era. And then the season they have a season off because of injuries, to your point, to their most important player or players. We have a Liverpool who just is basically playing getting results like they're perfect. They may not be a perfect team, but from our standpoint, we don't get a say in that. They keep getting all the points, and here we are. We have a few injuries, and it just leaves you off the pace. If this was back in the day when you just had to beat Ferguson's Man United, and you 84 points or 83 points or 85 points would be enough, then you could absorb an injury for maybe a couple of months and the rest step up. But 2 injuries in the one season in this era, in esta economia, it's either Man City or Liverpool, who aren't nearly as good as Man City, but are winning every bloody game. So what does it really matter? We only get to trip them up twice in the year. Once at the Emirates, when we got a red card against us, once at Anfield, and that's it. That's how you can impact on their season. They're winning all their games all the rest of the time because they got no injuries. It doesn't have to be Man City if they're getting Man City type results. In this era, if you have injuries to Saka and Odegaard, it's too big a delta to make up that gap. You don't if you're not near perfection yourself, you just can't beat the other team.
Yeah, look, I think we have the talent to win most games, but and the game model, but like the talent matters. And like the funny thing is, people can criticize, you're a corner FC, you get goals from corners, or you're defensive. I got news for you. Getting goals off corners and being defensive allows us to survive missing an Odegaard or survive missing a Saka, at least somewhat. If we didn't have a good defense, or if we couldn't score from corners, then you lose talent and you have no plan B. You have no way to survive that. So, I think it is a credit to us that we have ways to survive it. Well, let's do this before we get out of here. I'm not going to ask any more questions. I'm just going to ask you this. Thoughts ahead of the Ipswich game tomorrow. It's obviously a big one. We're in good form. It has to be a win, he says, obviously, but it literally allows us to gain ground on Chelsea. I just want to say this just real quick because you made this point. I think it's a great one. People who refer back to the early 2000s time period as a reference point for things really do miss something you called out, Paul, which is so important. And it's just the idea that, like, once upon a time, we knew going into a season, if we finished above United, we'd be champions. And United knew if they finished above us, they'd be champions. And that was that. Liverpool were down. Chelsea hadn't started yet. It wasn't much of a league beyond Arsenal and United for about a decade, or at least 8 or 9 years. And, now you have billions of pounds being spent by Chelsea. You have all the financial fund of Manchester City. You have a Liverpool team that has built a Champions League and league-winning squad that still has one of the best players, if not the best player in the league. You have teams like Forest and Bournemouth, right, that can show up and beat you. You have Spurs who, okay, they could score goals. They're not very good. You have United who are not very good. Point is, the league's competitive level is so much higher now that, if you told me going into this season we'd finish above City, I'd still worry Liverpool were a problem. And now here Chelsea have entered the race. So it's just not the days it once was where there were 2 contenders. There's so much money in the league, and the league is just harder now. So I don't think it's worth comparing against. But let's move forward and finish it off. What do you think about the Ipswich game tomorrow? Just some quick thoughts.
It's probably a good game for us to start to try something different here. They play pretty open football, attractive football, but they're a candidate for a good spanking. So I think it's a good chance for us to try out our game model, which I hope involves Odegaard on the right with Martinelli as the winger, and on the left-hand side we try out the Trossard, Havertz, Jesus thing that start getting a feel for playing with each other game in, game out, and really start to create that platform from that side, with probably Odegaard coming a little bit more central and over to their side to join in, because that's where the fun is. Get him a little more centrally. So I think it's a game it's the game we maybe need to kind of set the new model for how we play the next run of games. So I'm excited about it. I think it'll be interesting experiment we didn't ask for. But what do they say? Necessity is the mother of invention. I want to see the Leverkusen model brought out again, see what we can do with it.
Yeah, I'm not sure what we should do. I'll level with you. I would like to see Rice play. I would like to see Rice start in the role Kai was given in the last game, because I just think the way he looked, that is devastating. And the thing about this game, you cannot look past it, but it is such an important game for us to look good, to figure some things out, to feel confident in how we play without Saka, and to understand how we want to. Because after that, we go to Brentford, we go to Brighton. It's a semifinal against Newcastle. It's an FA Cup against United. It's Spurs at the Emirates. It's Villa at the Emirates. It's Wolves away. It's City at the Emirates. It's the second leg against Newcastle. It's not until February 15th away to Leicester. And even, they give us trouble at the Emirates. It's that, because then we go Leicester away, West Ham at home. That's a little bit of a respite maybe, but it is a period in January where after this Ipswich game, it gets real serious, real fast, and we have to know how we want to play absent Saka. So my comment tomorrow would be, go batter Ipswich. Don't look past them. But in battering them, do your best to figure out what you think your best 11 players on the pitch can be absent Saka, so that when you go into Brentford away, Brighton away, Newcastle, United, Spurs, Villa, you're not guessing. We don't want to be guessing when we hit that run, and this is a chance to figure it out. In my mind, that group is Timber, Gabriel, Saliba, Calafiori. It is either Partey, Odegaard, and Rice, or it is Rice, Marino, and Odegaard, and it is probably Jesus, Kai, and Martinelli or Leo. That's probably what it is, but we'll have to see. We should leave it there. We'll have an instant reaction after the Ipswich game. Hope everyone had a great holiday. Paul, thank you very much.
Woo!
My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. We love you, and we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Ipswich 0.